Maybe all the Orioles offense needed was just a nice day off, some rest, some relaxation on Monday, and then they get back to it Tuesday, and the bats look like the bats we know, beating the Red Sox and spoiling Boston's home opener. I'll recap the win coming up on this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast.
You are Locked On Orioles, your daily Baltimore Orioles podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, Orioles fans. Today is Wednesday, April 10th, 2024, and welcome back into the Locked On Orioles podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, I'm your host, Connor Newcomb, and coming up on today's episode, we are going to recap the Orioles' 7-1 victory over the Red Sox on Tuesday afternoon, getting you the 5 things you need to know from that one, including a great start from Corbin Burnes and a big day at the plate for Colton Cowser. Then we're going to run through some Orioles news and notes. O's got some great news on Kyle Bradish and his potential return on Tuesday. We'll also talk about some minor league releases for the O's and much, much more. But we start with an Orioles win. An Orioles win that, although they only gave up 1 run, which is always nice, was led by the offense. Final score from Fenway Park in Boston on Tuesday afternoon. The Orioles 7 and the Red Sox 1. The O's get to 6-4 now through 10 games on this season. And frankly, they spoiled the Red Sox home opener. Boston, for some reason, they made them play 10 games on the road on the West Coast to open their season before finally opening up at home on April 9th. They had some big ceremonies before the game for opening day. They honored the 20-year anniversary of the amazing 2004 team that finally broke the curse and won the World Series. They also honored the life of Tim Wakefield, who tragically passed away due to cancer back in the winter. And it was all those festivities for the Red Sox, and it was honestly a pretty moving scene before the game. But the Orioles were ready to play, and they came in there, and the offense got things going. 7 runs on 13 hits. And they win it 7-1. And I'm going to get you the 5 things you need to know from this Orioles 7-1 victory over the Red Sox. And the first thing you need to know is Colton Cowser wants that everyday left field job. And I don't know if he's ever going to get, at least this year, the everyday job. But at the very least, like I talked about on yesterday's mailbag episode, Colton Cowser at least wants the strong side of that left field platoon. And he certainly showed it on Tuesday. Cowser getting just his 3rd start in the Orioles order this year on Tuesday, started in left field and hitting 7th against the right-handed young pitcher Brian Bayo for the Red Sox. And Cowser had a huge day, 2 for 4 with a couple of doubles, 2 strikeouts, and 4 RBIs. Cowser had 3 hard-hit balls, started his day off strong. In the 2nd inning, blasts a ball off the monster in left center field, hit it 102 for an RBI double to tie the game at 1. Then Cowser comes up again in the 4th inning in a huge spot with runners on 2nd and 3rd and 2 down, laces a single into left center field, a 2-run single that gave the O's a 3-1 lead. Then we saw Cowser again. He did strike out in the 6th inning, but that strikeout in the 6th inning was interesting because the O's had a runner on 2nd with 2 down. They were leading 3-1 in the top of the 6th. So not the highest leverage spot, but still a spot where you've seen Brandon Hyde in the past use a pinch hitter for a better matchup. Austin Hayes didn't start. He's a righty. He's on the bench. The Red Sox had gone to the bullpen. The lefty Joely Rodriguez was on the mound, and Hyde stuck with Cowser. Now, it didn't work out. Cowser struck out to end the inning, keep it a 3-1 game, but Hyde could have easily gone to Austin Hayes there. And you could argue, well, maybe it was just, Hayes has been struggling. He's getting a full off day no matter what. He's not playing in this game. But that wasn't even the case because in the 9th inning, Hayes came in and replaced Santander in right field as a defensive replacement. Now, he played 3 outs, didn't have to do anything, so he didn't do much, but it wasn't a full off day. Hayes played that bottom of the 9th defensively, and so that's really intriguing to me that Cowser wasn't pinch hit for. He stayed in the game against the lefty, and I've been saying it this week. The Orioles are most likely facing 3 right-handed starters in this Red Sox series. Pay close attention to how many times Cowser starts. I said most likely Hayes will start 1 game. But if Cowser starts 2 of 3 with Hayes on the bench, I think that'll show that the Orioles are moving in a Colton Cowser direction a little bit. So far, 1 for 1 with Cowser in the lineup. And certainly he delivered. Now, he did have that strikeout in the 6th, as I mentioned, but came up with the bases loaded and no outs in the 8th, delivered a sac fly to extend the Orioles lead. He did strike out with the bases loaded in the 9th, but either way, really big day for Colton Cowser. He had 4 RBIs in this game for the Orioles. 7 runs were driven in by Cowser. Colton Cowser had 4 RBIs in the big leagues all of last year when he struggled. That's how big of a day this was for Colton Cowser. Second thing you need to know from this Orioles win on Tuesday is that Gunnar Henderson was absolutely scorching the baseball in this game. 4 hard hit balls for Gunnar, who goes 2 for 5 with a double in this game. And his bat hasn't exactly been super hot. He's up to now a 757 OPS after a nice little day for Henderson in this one, but you know he's going good when he's hitting the ball this hard. Now, he did have a soft ground out to lead off the game in the first inning, but after that, he started smacking the baseball around the ballpark. He grounded out in the third, but he hit it 102 off the bat. He lined out in the fifth, but he hit it 104 off the bat, 312 feet, just kind of a rocket out to right field. And then the hits started to fall. A double in the seventh, 104 off the bat. A single in the ninth, also 104 off the bat. When you hit the ball hard, you are eventually rewarded. We saw that Tuesday from the entire Orioles offense, but we specifically saw it from Gunnar Henderson. And the third thing you need to know from the O's win over the Red Sox on Tuesday is that the O's offense got reignited, and probably some Colton Cowser helped it. Probably some Gunnar Henderson helped it, but did the reintroduction of the sprinkler reignite this Orioles offense? Because when Colton Cowser got that RBI double off the monster in the second in his first at-bat to tie the game at 1, he got to second base and he did the sprinkler celebration. It was the first time we had seen the sprinkler from an Oriole after an extra base hit so far in 2024. It was, of course, the Orioles' main celebration on extra base hits last year. Now, we haven't seen the dong bong return to the dugout, but Colton Cowser talking to the media after the game, Danielle Allentuck of the Banner tweeting it out that Cowser said the team had talked on the off day and said, maybe it could help us out if we bring back the sprinkler for this one. And maybe it did, because the Orioles, after having a really tough week, and go back and listen to Tuesday's mailbag episode to talk about how bad it got offensively for the Orioles, but they score 7 runs in this game. They pick up 13 hits. Every Orioles starter except for Tony Kemp, who had an 0 for 3 out of the 9 spot, had at least 1 hit in this game. Gunnar had 2 hits. Adley had 2 hits. Cedric Mullins had 2 hits, a walk and an RBI in this game. Colton Cowser had the 2 doubles. Ryan O'Hearn had a hit and 2 walks in this one. Santander's been struggling a bit, but he did have a hit and an RBI. It was only an infield single, but even Ramon Arias had a hit in this game as well. Jorge Mateo got a hit off a righty in his first at-bat against a right-hander this year. Gets a single, should have been an RBI. Kind of a boneheaded base running mistake by Cedric Mullins. Took a run off the board, but still a nice swing from Mateo. Maybe it is the sprinkler that kickstarted the offense. And maybe the biggest thing above all else, the stats here, we know how much the Orioles struggled over the weekend in Pittsburgh, hitting with runners in scoring position. The O's go 8 for 15 at the plate with runners in scoring position. That will get the job done, certainly. And that is a huge step forward for this Orioles offense. Hey, let's keep the sprinkler around. Let's get the dong bong back. Let's bring back those great 2023 vibes. Fourth thing you need to know from the Orioles 7-1 in Boston is that it is just awesome to have Corbin Burnes on your baseball team. It is awesome to have him as the ace of your staff. And after a completely dominant opening day start against the Angels, he hasn't been the same pitcher, right? He didn't have his best stuff against the Royals last week. And I don't think he had his absolute best strikeout stuff on Tuesday in Boston either. But he still posted a dominant start. 7 innings of 1-run ball from Burnes, allowing just 2 hits, striking out 6 with 2 walks. The only run he allowed, a 2-out solo home run from Tyler O'Neill in the first inning that put the Red Sox up 1-0. O'Neill's been red hot. He's now got 6 homers in like 30 at-bats this year. Had 9 homers all of last season. Tyler O'Neill is just on one right now. Tyler O'Neill had also seen Burnes more than any other Red Sox hitter, because O'Neill, until the trade this winter, had been with the Cardinals and had been in the same division as Burnes when he was with the Brewers. So a hot hitter who's seen Corbin Burnes, if anybody was going to homer off him, it was probably going to be O'Neill, and that's what happened. He crushed one over the monster in the first inning. And then Burnes said, okay, 6 scoreless after that. Only gave up 6 hard hit balls. Now, it wasn't a huge strikeout day, right, with just 6 of them. He also walked 2 batters. Burnes did not walk anyone in his first 2 starts. He rarely will walk more than 1 batter in any given start. So that was a little concerning at times. And he only got 10 swings and misses on 36 swings. Like, that's not a big whiff day you usually see from Corbin Burnes. But the cutter in this game, the cutter was unreal. 43 of his 90 pitches were cutters. He was pinpointing that thing on the corners wherever he wanted and whenever he wanted to. It was quite a display from the best cutter in baseball that we saw from Corbin Burnes It is just fun to watch that guy pitch. And even when he's not, getting the 11 strikeouts like he had against the Angels on opening day, he can still punch out 6 and he can still be efficient. He only threw 90 pitches to get through 7 innings. Quite honestly, I would have maybe sent Corbin Burnes back out there in the 8th. O's had a 5-1 lead, a little bit of a cushion, only at 90 pitches. I would have given him a chance. Why not? I'm fine that the Orioles didn't. They still won the game, but he was rolling. It is just, I'm going to say this time and time again on the podcast this year. It is just amazing to have a true ace at the top of your rotation. And the 5th and final thing you need to know from the Orioles win on Tuesday is that the bullpen followed up Corbin Burnes, and they were perfect. They were literally perfect. Danny Coulombe came in the 8th. Apparently, he's like the best reliever in baseball right now. Coulombe strikes out the side with just some filthy stuff. And I got to say, Danny Coulombe, he throws the cutter and the sweeper and the slider and the curveball. And he's got all these pitches he throws at you, all these off-speed pitches. He tries to just kind of junk ball you to death. But when Coulombe just kind of throws in a sinker, throws in the fastball every now and then, it is sometimes even more fun to watch than his devastating breaking balls. And I say that because of what happened to end that 8th inning. He had a 1-2 count on the lefty Jarren Duran at the top of the Red Sox order, and he'd been throwing all these breaking balls, all this breaking stuff the entire inning to strike out Romy Gonzalez and to strike out Connor Wong. And then he just throws a little two-seam fastball, backdoor, dots it on the outside corner to strike out Duran looking. And the pitch was only 90, maybe 91 miles an hour. Looking at it right now, yeah, it was 91 on the corner. But to throw all that breaking stuff, 91 looks like 99. And when you paint it on the black, Coulombe's just on a different level right now. Danny Coulombe this season, 5 innings, no runs, 1 hit, 8 strikeouts, no walks. He's been ridiculous. And then Jacob Webb came in, got a 1-2-3 bottom of the 9th to end the game. How about Jacob Webb? After kind of a concerning spring training, a bad ending to his 2023 season, and missing opening day, congratulations to him, the birth of his first child, he comes back. And he's been awesome. Now, Webb hasn't been in nearly as many high leverage spots as Coulombe has, but Jacob Webb now also 5 scoreless innings, also 1 hit, 6 strikeouts to 1 walk for the righty Webb. It's been a good little combination between those two, and they did it again to finish off this 7-1 Orioles win to open up this series in Boston, ruin the Red Sox home opener, and continue their streak of not being swept in a series in the regular season. But the Orioles get the W, the bats wake up again, but I would argue that depending on how you look at it, that win wasn't even the best Orioles news from Tuesday. What was the best news? Well, I'll get to it coming up next. But first, this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast is brought to you by PrizePicks. Now, we are full swing into the baseball season at this point, and you don't want to miss your chance to add your favorite players from the diamond to your PrizePicks entries, whether it's strikeouts, RBIs, or first inning runs. You just take your pick of more or less. That's all you got to do. PrizePicks gives you a number. You just say, I think it's going to be more, or I think it's going to be less. That's all you have to do to add them to your PrizePicks entry today. And you can also get it on NBA playoff action. Can't believe it. NBA playoffs start next week. More or less on your favorite players. You can win up to 100 times your money on PrizePicks. So just download the app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, download the PrizePicks app today. Use code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match up to $100 at PrizePicks. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy. So the Orioles took down the Red Sox 7-1 on Tuesday to get to 6-4 on the season. But the reason why I said that may have not been the best news the Orioles got on Tuesday is that they got some really positive news on Kyle Bradish. Orioles announcing shortly before today's game that Bradish will be joining the Aberdeen Ironbirds, I believe today, and will be starting a rehab assignment on the mound sometime later this week. Now, we hadn't had an update on Bradish in a little bit. Just to kind of recap the timeline, he felt something in his elbow when he was throwing in January to ramp up for the season. We learned about it when pitchers and catchers reported in February for the Orioles. He ended up getting a PRP injection in his elbow and went the rest route instead of thinking about Tommy John surgery. Started throwing again, just playing catch when spring training started. Then in March, started throwing bullpens off of a mound, just fastballs early, then started mixing in the breaking balls. We hadn't got an update in a couple of weeks, but this is the best update we've gotten. Because if you're advancing to going on a rehab assignment, and that is what is happening here, he will go to the Aberdeen Ironbirds, the high A affiliate of the Orioles, for a rehab assignment. that means you're going to throw off the mound in an actual game setting. And that is a big step towards coming back. Now, remember, this does not mean he's going to be healthy and going to be fine and going to come back this year. The next big hurdle is throw some high effort pitches in a game environment and then seeing how your elbow responds, seeing how it feels after those first couple outings. And it's going to be a build-up process for Kyle Bradish. And remember, last year, Dylan Tate had the elbow and the forearm issues, ended up missing the entire season. Now, he avoided having Tommy John surgery. He's back this year, been pretty solid out of the Oriole bullpen, but they missed him all of last year. Tate had at least two, it might have been even three different rehab assignments that he went on in AA and AAA and just never felt right and never made it back to the big leagues. Each time he would go on the rehab, he'd spend the 30 days, and then he would go back on the injured list. So that's definitely a possibility. I mean, Bradish could throw in a game and be like, it's not okay, go back to the IL to wait again. It could even happen that he throws and he feels even worse, and then he ends up getting Tommy John surgery after that. Like, that is still on the table, but this is still a positive step forward for Kyle Bradish. So let's say his rehab start is, I mean, they haven't announced what day it will be, but let's say it's tomorrow. Let's say it's Thursday, April 11th. He pitches for the Ironbirds on a rehab start. He'll obviously throw 2 innings maybe, then he'll build it up to 3 and 4 and build up the pitch count every time. But there are rehab assignment rules. You can only stay on a rehab assignment for a maximum of 30 days. Once those 30 days in the minors are up, you either have to place the player back on the injured list or activate them to the major leagues. Now, the Orioles have another option with Kyle Bradish, and that is that he does have options. So theoretically, if at the end of the 30 days he was in AAA Norfolk, he was throwing on rehab, but they felt like he needs like one more start before he's ready for the bigs, the Orioles could option him to AAA because he does have options, have him make a start or 2 more in Norfolk, and then just call him up whenever they feel like he's fully ready. So in that case, they're not strictly prohibited by the 30 days, but in general, 30 days from April 11th would be May 11th. And if all goes well and the rehab goes great, you could see John Means on May 11th. Now, I would think because he didn't even have his spring training build up or anything, it's going to take more than the 30 days. My assumption is as long as he stays healthy in the rehab assignment, on May 11th, they do activate him and then immediately option him down to AAA. He makes a few starts, but here's the thing, like, even being cautious, if the rehab and the buildup goes well, I think we're going to see Kyle Bradish by June 1st back in the Orioles rotation. And to only miss him for potentially 2 months would be huge for this Orioles team. I mean, 4th in AL Cy Young voting, ace of the staff last year. To put him in at number 2 behind Corbin Burnes would be incredible. And I don't want to get ahead of myself because I'm still worried he's going to end up getting Tommy John. And I'm still worried even if he pitches this year with the injury, he just won't be as good as he was last year. Those are all things that are on the table. This rehab assignment could go poorly. He could go right back on the injured list. Really anything could happen here, but this is a huge first step forward. And remember, John Means is already pitching on rehab, had a pretty good rehab outing, 50 pitches, 3 strong innings in Norfolk on Saturday. His 30 days are going to be up on April 30th, which means by May 1st, John Means is either going to be back on the IL or more likely, John Means will be joining the Orioles rotation by May 1st. If you can get Means on May 1st and Bradish on June 1st, I think you're in a good spot here because when you add those two back, Cole Irvin and Tyler Wells most likely both go back into the Oriole bullpen, which strengthens the pen, and you're more so at full strength by June 1st. That would be incredible for the Orioles team. I'm a little more optimistic than I was a week ago with this news. I'm still overall pessimistic. I'm still super worried, especially when you look across the game, how many big-time pitchers have gone down with elbow injuries just early this year. But I am holding out hope that Bradish is one of the few who actually the PRP injection and the rest actually works for the elbow, and he can return to the field without the Tommy John surgery. We have taken a step in that direction with this announcement of the rehab assignment. We got a few more things to get to in terms of Orioles and news and notes, some minor league news, a minor trade, a couple other things to get to before we finish up. So I'll get to that when we come back here on this episode. But first, this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast is also brought to you by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. That's the formula for winning championships, and it's also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and so much more. Whether you're into speed, whether you're into power or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber and not cash. So with all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit is only available to U.S. customers. So back here for just a few Orioles news and notes before we finish up today's episode. Did just want to send my thoughts out to the family of Larry Lucchino, who passed away a couple of weeks ago at the age of 78. Lucchino, who initially was a lawyer for the Orioles and then was hired as the team president, served in that role from 1988 to 1993. Also, speaking of the 2004 Red Sox, he had a huge role in building and helping out with that Red Sox team, finally getting back to prominence and winning a championship, but known in Baltimore for really helping execute the plan for Oriole Park at Camden Yards. He was the team president when they put the plan in place to build the ballpark, put the plans together for what that ballpark would look like, made the decision to keep the warehouse there and give it this brand new look that no other ballpark had seen. And truly it is the ballpark that forever changed baseball. And Larry Lucchino was kind of all over that in his role as Orioles team president. And I think he'll be remembered fondly in Baltimore for his role there in really building Camden Yards out to be what it was then and what it still is today. So our thoughts go to his family with his unfortunate and tragic passing at the age of 78 a couple of weeks ago. Now, the Orioles, of course, I mean, they owe the beautiful ballpark, a lot of the excitement around the ballpark, the players that get to play there. I mean, it's truly awesome what he contributed to Oriole Park, which is just a beautiful place to go and watch a baseball game. Orioles did make a very minor trade at the end of last week as well. If you remember, Diego Castillo, 26-year-old infielder who the Orioles had claimed off waivers from the Twins back on February 16th, was actually his sixth organization of the season. Castillo had just been bouncing around everywhere on waivers all offseason. He was in camp with the Orioles, but once they began the season, he did not make the team. And looking at AAA, they just had too much infield talent, didn't have a place to play him. And so the Twins wanted him. And Minnesota came in, gave the O's some cash. They traded him to the Minnesota Twins for cash considerations. He is now in AAA with Minnesota. But the 26-year-old infielder, pretty versatile, plays second, short, third, first base, right field, a right-handed hitter, was pretty bad, I would say, in his first major league stint, 2022 with the Pirates. Got a pretty big run, almost 300 plate appearances, hit just 206 with a 72 WRC+. But he was really great in AAA with the Diamondbacks last year. He only appeared in a couple of games at the big league level, but at the AAA level, he was awesome for Arizona. Had almost 600 AAA plate appearances, hit 313 with a 117 WRC+ at the AAA level last year. So that was pretty impressive by Castillo. And the Orioles wanted that infield depth in spring training. That's why they brought him in, but just didn't need it in AAA once the season started. He did play in a few games for Norfolk, but in general, Twins needed him more. O's will take some cash. It is a very minor trade that happened last week. And then speaking of the minor leaguers, unfortunately, a part of starting new seasons is generally releasing some minor league players. You need to make space for other guys. There's a certain amount of players you can have on each minor league roster. And unfortunately, the Orioles did release 3 players last week from their minor league system. The guys over On the Verge were on it first on Twitter. But the first was outfielder Trendon Craig, who I was pretty excited about. He was a 20th round draft pick in the 2021 draft, the Orioles' final selection in that draft. Outfielder out of a smaller school, but Lewisburg College, which is actually where Cedric Mullins played before he transferred to Campbell. Craig was set to transfer to NC State, pretty good ACC program, but instead took the money from the Orioles to sign in the draft. Good defensive outfielder with some pop in the back, kind of an exciting prospect, but just kind of never put it together. He was great in Delmarva last year, but he was really old for the level. So then they moved him up to Aberdeen and he really struggled. Also missed some time with injury. Overall, a 728 OPS in the minors with the Orioles, and hope he can find his next baseball home. The next release was right-handed pitcher Carson Carter. He had signed with the Orioles as an undrafted free agent after that 2021 draft. 26-year-old righty who has had some injuries over the past couple of years. Actually repeated Aberdeen again in 2023, and at 25 years old, you don't want to be repeating high A, and didn't exactly have the best success. 4.30 ERA, good strikeout rate, but a 14% walk rate is just way too high. Again, for Carson Carter, hopefully the right-hander out of Oklahoma finds a new baseball home. And then the last one for Jensen Elliott. He is by far the longest tenured Oriole who was released last week. Another 26-year-old, 6'6" righty who was a 19th round selection in the 2019 draft, the first Mike Elias draft with the Orioles. He took Jensen Elliott, and Elliott had some good numbers, but he repeated Double-A in 2023 and then also got injured and missed a good chunk of time last year. And at 26, he was probably going to be back at Double-A this year. The Orioles end up releasing him. And again, for Jensen Elliott, who spent good almost 5 years in the O's system, we wish him the best in his next baseball endeavor. But that'll do it for today's episode. Big win for the O's as they win it in Boston. The offense gets it back going. And I did say it at the end of Tuesday's mailbag episode. I said, if there's any place where the Orioles bats could easily get going, it's Park. The last few years, they scored a lot of runs at Fenway. Hopefully that happens again tonight. Game 2 of 3 between the O's and the Sox. It'll be a 7:10 p.m. Eastern time start. Cole Irvin will get the baseball for the Orioles. For Irvin, it's actually only his second start. They flipped Burnes and Irvin in the order, so Burnes could pitch on Tuesday. Irvin's first start gave up 4 runs over 5 innings of work. He'll look to improve on that in Boston on Wednesday, and he will go up against the vaunted TBD. Yes, it was supposed to be the right-hander Nick Pivetta, who had been unbelievable in his first 2 starts with the Red Sox. Pivetta was put on the injured list on Tuesday with a flexor strain. The Red Sox have not yet named who the starter will be. Now, in the corresponding move, they called up left-hander Brennan Bernardino to replace Pivetta on the roster, but Bernardino mostly was a reliever with the Red Sox last year, so I don't think that's the direct move as the starter. So we will see. Obviously, the way the O's have been playing, much rather see a righty than a lefty in that TBD spot, but there's a couple of guys they could go to. Maybe they try Bernardino with a bullpen game. Josh Winkowski would have been an option, except he pitched 2 innings in relief on Tuesday, so I don't think it's going to be him for the Red Sox. We will see where Boston goes with this starter. And then I will be back with you on Thursday recapping game 2 of that series. But until then, I'm Connor Newcomb, and this has been the Locked On Orioles podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.